Though earth passes through the ether, with no reverence today, for the sun upon whose life it does depend. Though the people of this planet, knowing not their former ways, send him slander, and some wish his reign would end. Once upon an ancient past, the sacred sun was seen by all as a deity whose daily fiery flight was a means of keeping order and provided one and all with the blessings of the cycles of his light. And the blessings he did grant kept the entire world in health, the him and lack of him, which was his fame, provided earthly beings with a biologic wealth and a reason to be thankful for his name. For his name it was Apollo, Lord and Master of the Light, and those did well who understood his ways, who taught themselves the language that he spoke with every flight, and allowed his will to guide their mortal days. Now Apollo's sacred language is the cycle of the light, a language he still speaks to us each day. He starts blue in the morning, is full spectrum at his height, and orange as he fades and goes away. With a final flash of crimson he leaves us in the dark, as healthy and as needed as the dawn. His absence is perfection, and he'll make no further mark till daybreak, when the whole world is reborn. For 1,000 million turnings of the earth around his might, Apollo's sacred cycle was the law. And no living thing would break it, for if any chose that fight, their being would be shaken to the core. For entwined within his giving is the power to remove the health of those whose attitudes offend. Respect him and his cycles, and your health may well improve, but mock him and your mortal days could end. He controls far more than sunlight, he controls desire too, the types of food you wish to eat and when. From the darkest depths of winter when you crave a meaty stew, to summer fruit on long days without end. From this outer larger balance comes a smaller one within, which quantities of hormones will attest, and which tell the human body the ideal time to begin, and how to grow, and even when to rest. But 1 billion years of balance was all ended by a man with an incandescent bulb above his head. And hubristically the humans, doing just because they can, shone light where darkness should have been instead. And this profane light of humans, which ignored Apollo's law and mocked his finely crafted mode of speech, spoke only of the morning, and wherever it did pour, would hold the health of darkness out of reach. But the joy of all the humans who perceived that they had won a victory over darkness in their world. Armed with artificial power, a new era had begun, as the flag of human progress was unfurled. And surveying from the heavens this transgression of his power, an all-consuming wrath was stirred within. You may mark the year, and mark the date, and mark the very hour the chronic epidemic did begin. First the wealthy were affected as they made light of their own, then the middle class, and finally the poor. Though the rollout took 100 years, it entered every home, and would change the health of life forevermore. Though initially the change to human life did not seem great, with a shorter single sleep instead of 2, and a craving for more summer food to pile upon the plate, when the fatty food of winter wouldn't do. But as decades wore on slowly, so the drip became a stream, and the more the night became a second day, with late-night television to replace the human dream, as Somnus and his sons were turned away. And though illness was increasing, none would guess at its true cause, for their greatest pride it surely could not be. And so the march of progress now would not be stopped or paused, and continued like a river to the sea. Living in their new creation, an eternal world of light, of never-ending morning summer sun, the experts of this new world saw a chance to set things right and reduce the human fat intake to none. So they built a mighty pyramid, a truly noble cause, with tons of grain and sugar at its base. And they forced the world to eat it, and they gave themselves applause for saving the entire human race. And the fact this was unhinged from any cycle of the earth simply made it more correct in their own eyes. For they had no time for cycles, and now taught their young from birth the ancients and the old ways to despise. For what usage could be found in this brave new world of theirs for a nature so interminably slow? The past was dying quickly now, and all the human heirs needed sugar and more summerlight to grow. In a life now made for living, and for living at full speed, there was no time for winter's hoary rest. With a full-time lust for living came a full-time lust for greed, with the summer attitude considered best. No more time for earning money, only time to thieve and spend, no time for food but substances for all. And no time for feeling human, as on drugs they could depend, to steady the imbalance felt by all. And speaking of imbalance, and of trying something bold, the human gods now made their food bespoke. The pressing of 1 billion seeds was something to behold, and would make the fat of animals a joke. When Apollo saw this oil inside all the cells of man, his gaze its feeble structure did ignite, and he burned the human body with a fervour and elan, which gave the mass of mockers quite a fright. Undeterred, the clever humans saw a way that they could mend a problem which had not been won before. So they made a special skin cream on which now they would depend whenever they did venture from the door. And with government advice to eat the oil of the seed and avoid Apollo's rays at any cost, the experts of the planet, in their need for a new creed, didn't see the world of balance they had lost. The divorce with great Apollo was now more or less complete, the die of which, cast willingly by all, harangued the ancient deity, and bade him to compete with a mania which held the world in thrall. Fertility collapsing and all cancers on the rise, 3 types of diabetes, heart disease, mortality increasing, chronic illness by surprise, a spate of strokes, whole families obese, unknown ills with unknown cures, newly formed and newly found, too much for all the lab coats to contend, but a chance for those whose business minds would like to break new ground. May the sickness and their profits never end. And though you dearly hope that we had reached the lowest point, your hope would find that it had been misplaced. For the world ignored Apollo, and instead chose to anoint a deity named Science in his place. A digital revolution had begun for all mankind, and it meant a shiny screen for every palm. And the shiny screen made blue light, and it entered every mind, entraining and inflicting extra harm. And when Sol Invictus witnessed this new heinous human sleight, which handed all a power owned by him, a small god in each pocket, making cheap and nasty light, his glowing youthful countenance was grim. It is said that gods bent to destroy will first make all insane, so he fixed upon the mockers' single pride, the key to their survival, the beloved human brain, and he cast all thought of mercy to the side. As anxiety and depression pulled the human species low, and amyloid gummed up the human mind, as neurons and their synapses now fired extra slow, and scores of helpless youth were left behind, as the light of man's intelligence now flickered and grew weak, and millions scratched for answers and asked why, those who once were high and mighty had become diseased and meek, and with such a chronic burden they would die. And though hashtags tried in vain to bring awareness to the trend, and funds were pledged to stop the steep decline, all the scientific saviors with their $1 trillion spend were impotent to heal the human mind. Since circadian disruption had become the social norm, no mocker thought that it could be to blame. for the rates of mental illness which now surged in every form, and which tore apart with chaos every brain. And with light-emitting diodes flicking well into the night, and the screens of all emitting deathly blue, and with tortured mitochondria, recoiling at the sight, and wishing that their human masters knew, while the mass of sickly humans gazed to science for the key, and hoped that it would grant them special powers, there were some among the humans who looked backward towards He, whose sacred language once controlled the hours. For the tragedy they faced could be averted by a turn away from ignorance to light, to the true light of Apollo, whose shining features burn with wisdom that would overcome their plight. While his wisdom is unheeded by the world in which we live, and the ancient ones all turn their heads in shame, so his blessings more than needed to this world he will not give, while this world no longer celebrates his name. For his name it is Apollo, Lord and Master of the Light, and you would do well to understand his law, to teach yourself the language that he speaks with every flight, and allow his will to guide your life once more.